Welcome to Yoga for Normal People, guys. It is a Monday night, and I have had a very long day. So, we're going to do a really simple practice down on the floor. All you're going to need for tonight's practice is going to be a pair of tennis balls, or I have a pair of lacrosse balls, and I am sitting on a blanket. If you feel like you want to have a blanket around, do that. This is meant to be a really nice kind of simple practice tonight, centering on opening up the heart, opening up the chest, but really releasing a lot of the tension in the back of the neck. So instead of sort of coming into a seat, what I'd like you to do is you're going to take your blanket or your towel here, and you're just going to make a small square with it and kind of flatten it out just a little bit. And from here, just fold the two corners in towards the middle. So you're kind of making almost like if you grew up in the era that I grew up in and you made those little fortune teller things, it's like you're making a fortune teller with your blanket. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take your two or one, however many you have, but I happen to have two tennis balls, and you're going to place them right into that space between those two triangles that you just folded in. And those two balls are going to come right to the back of the base of the head and then the base of the neck. So right at where your head and neck meet and right where your neck and shoulders meet. So go ahead and turn your back to that setup, and you're just going to kind of come on back. And it's going to take a little bit of adjustment, a little bit of moving around to kind of get you to that right spot. But once you find it, it will start to make sense. So I'm kind of scooching around until those two balls feel like they're in a nice place at the back of my head and at the back of my neck. And if you're like me, there's actually a space between them. And then I'm just going to let my head start to sink down. Now, if this is too much pressure, especially on like the ball that's more towards the base of your skull, you can always take that blanket that's sort of extended out above you and roll it up just a little to give the back of your head a little support. But if you feel like you like where those balls are, you can just kind of come into a little bit of rest on your back here. And start to take a couple of breaths. So I have my arms in kind of a cactus position here. If you'd like, you can always kind of take your hands to those balls behind your head. Or if you're comfortable, you can always take your hands down to your belly and your rib cage. I like the way it feels to have my arms kind of up above my head, elbows splayed wide, fingertips just touching. And here, all I'm doing is taking a couple of deep breaths into the support of those tennis balls, one at the base of my skull and one at the base of my neck. There's a little bit of traction that's happening. Those balls may want to slide just a little bit. Maybe close your eyes. Or if closing your eyes doesn't feel like it's the right thing for you, you can just soften your gaze and keep your eyes open, looking towards the sky or towards the ceiling. And just begin to take a couple of deep breaths here. So as you breathe, notice the way that your belly expands and contracts. Let it rise and expand. Let it fall and contract down towards your spine. And just let everything kind of wash through you with your breath. Like you're just letting waves of breath move over you. And then if you'd like a little bit more of sort of a massage with those tennis balls, you can just slightly turn your head left and right. Because the blanket corners are folded in, those tennis balls should stay right where they are. You don't have to hold them. But just kind of allow your head to move very slightly, like you're shaking your head no. And again, I'm keeping my arms wide. I'm keeping them in cactus position, letting my shoulder blades slide down and away from my ears. And just letting especially the sides and the backs of my rib cage expand out towards the edges of the mat as I breathe. And you can just think about like moving your head back and forth very slowly. Just allowing gravity to do the work. And taking nice, easy, deep breaths in and letting them go. And if you'd like to start to incorporate a little bit of movement into your lower body, you can just start to windshield wiper your knees as you continue to kind of gently move your head left and right. So you don't have to move quickly here. You don't have to move slowly. You do have to move in whatever rhythm feels good to you. Just allow the movement to kind of come naturally, to come organically. It doesn't have to be any specific shape. And if you find a place where you want to hang out, feel like you can hang out. If you'd like, you can take your arms up overhead, maybe flip the palms, interlace the fingers, and reach towards the top of your mat as you windshield wiper those knees left and right. If it feels good to keep your head in one spot, keep your head in one spot. If it feels good to move it around, feel free to move it around. We'll take a few more of those left and right windshield wiper with the knees. And then just come back to center. You can release the grip of your hands. And here, just roll over to the left or right. We're going to just come up to sit for a second and make an adjustment to our setup. So using a similar shape here, you're just going to actually kind of scooch your blanket more towards the top of the mat, and you're going to separate the two tennis balls. One is going to go on the left side, right at the top of the edge of that corner, and one on the right side. And you can kind of like tuck them under the edges of those blankets so the blanket holds them in place. And then these two balls, and you're going to have to make some adjustment here, but those two balls are going to come right to backs of your shoulder blades. So one's going to come here and one's going to come here, and you can move them around to kind of get them closer or further away from just some nice places where we can let them do some work here. If your balls are too hard or if they feel too hard, you can always use the corner of the blanket to just cover them. But here, kind of move them towards the middle of your setup so that there's about probably 4 or 5 inches between the two of them, and there's probably about 4 or 5 inches to the edges of your blanket. And then you're going to turn around, and once again, you're going to find your way down onto your back so that those 2 points are right on those shoulder blades. So if you let your head drop, they're right in that spot that I just pointed out. And all you're going to do is you're just going to let gravity take hold here. And mine are right, the two balls are right on the insides of my shoulder blades. So I'm not actually connecting with bone here. I'm more in the muscle. And all I'm going to do is just reach my arms up overhead in a broad Y. And then on my exhale, I'm just going to drag the elbows down towards my rib cage in sort of a W. So we're going from a broad Y shape to a W shape. And as you move, see if you can maybe let your thumbs, the insides of your hands, so your index finger and your thumb, kind of glide along the floor. Now, as I drag my elbows down towards my rib cage, my hands are going to lift off the floor. I don't have that kind of flexion in my shoulders. But here we're just getting a little dynamic movement, getting a little pressure into those 2 pressure points to just kind of open up the chest. Now, I'm not going to lie, this is feeling a rather strong sensation, especially on my right side. So I'm right-handed, and I use my right arm for pretty much everything. especially when I'm stressed or tense or working a lot. My right arm gets a bit more sore than my left. So I'm really feeling this right now. And you can move on your rhythm, you can move on your breath. You may hear my voice get a little bit tense. That's because it is uncomfortable for me right now. And I'm just going to breathe through it. So I'm going to maybe blow out through pursed lips, see if I can't just settle in. And then once I've done just one more of those Y to W, I'm just going to take my hands back down to my rib cage. So that changes the position of the balls slightly. And I'm just going to start to kind of scrunch my shoulders down and move my hips down towards my heels until those balls slip out so that they're more at the top meaty parts of my shoulder. And here, take your hands over your chest, palms face one another. And then let your shoulder blades kind of plug in, so letting your arms drop into the sockets. Now, taking the hands up over the chest adds a little bit more gravity, adds a little bit more weight. If that's too much, you can always keep your arms down, cross your hands to opposite shoulders, give yourself a hug. That also changes the positioning of those tennis balls. And here, if you like, you can just kind of move and shimmy up and down, just very slightly, moving your pelvis, moving your hips up towards the top of your mat and down towards your heels. And just breathing into that sensation. And then as we kind of move up with those shoulders, you're just going to reach your hands over your head. Palms are still facing one another. And then you're going to move your hands back up over your chest. If you'd like, you can even go a little bit further and take your hands down next to your hips. Palms are still facing in, but just kind of get a little dynamic movement here. Take a few breaths. And you can audibly sigh out. Just let everything kind of go. And I'm kind of keeping my eyes closed just so I can really tune into what's really happening in my body, what things are feeling like. If I need to pause, if I need to find a place to kind of hang out and work a little bit, I can do that. If I need to adjust the positioning of those tennis balls, I can also do that. And then once you've done enough of that for you, go ahead and just reach behind you, take those two tennis balls out from under your shoulders. You can place them off to the side and just kind of let your body rest on that blanket. You can let your knees knock towards one another. I like to turn my feet in so that my toes turn towards each other. There's a very slight lift through about the mid ribs here with the way my blanket is, with where it is in my back. And we're going to continue to kind of work with that and open things up a little bit more. Take a few breaths. And just notice sort of how your muscles have responded to those pressure points that we've worked. For me, I feel a warmth. I feel a tingling that's moved into sort of that space. It feels really nice. It feels almost like somebody has either given me a massage or placed a nice warm towel across my upper back. So my shoulders and my neck are starting to relax and release. And just take a couple breaths here. Just let gravity take hold. Let your body sink down into the mat. And just let everything kind of settle out. And then all you're going to do is just gently drop your knees off to the left or right and roll your shoulders more towards the earth to kind of press down and sit up. And all we're going to do is we're just going to change the shape of our blanket here. So we've already got it sort of partially folded, what I'd like you to do is go ahead and just roll it up just a little bit. So in my case, I'm actually going to unfold my blanket and re-roll it, mostly because I want a little bit more space at the top of my blanket for my head. I also don't want a super big roll. So it's just one that's about, say, 3 inches across. And for right now, you're going to keep that roll kind of more towards the middle of your mat. Because what we're going to do is we're going to start to come back and lay across it so that we find the place at the lower ribs, then at the upper ribs, and then at the upper back. And so we're just going to open up the chest here and see what happens. So go ahead and turn your back towards that blanket, and you're just going to come down to rest on that spot and put your low rib cage against the place where that roll is. What you'd want to feel is sort of a lifting sensation, a kind of more of a softening into the space. So that roll is right at the base of sort of my back ribs, and I'm keeping my knees bent. If you feel like your roll is too much and there's too much of a curve in that low back, you can always unroll your blanket just a little bit. But here, just take a few breaths and feel how with that roll, right where your lower ribs are, notice how the fronts of your rib cage flares and opens. You can take your arms out wide, like you're expanding your wings, like you're trying to take in more air, allowing the lungs to open and expand. I'm going to spend 3 more breaths here. Just letting everything move down towards the mat. And again, I'm just letting my knees knock towards one another, turning my toes in towards my midline. If it's comfortable for you, you can always extend your legs out long. It changes the way gravity affects the place where the blanket roll sits. But if it works for you and if it feels good, then definitely take advantage of that. It just changes the sensation. And once you've taken that last breath, if your legs are out long, go ahead and bend both knees, plant your feet on the mat, and all you're going to do is just kind of press down into your elbows and walk your hips down towards your heels so that now that roll is now placed right at the base of your shoulder blades. And once again, spread your arms out wide, palms face up, let your rib cage, that mid space right below your chest, kind of lift and open. And see if as you breathe, you can imagine those lungs spreading out underneath your arms, so broadening through the side body, really expanding. And we're just going to spend 3 more breaths here before we start to wiggle down once again and find kind of the upper back. And again, play with the position of your feet. If you'd like to take them out long or if you'd like to bend your knees, just feel free to take whatever shape seems to suit you today. Or maybe different from what it was yesterday. And then when you're ready, you can Draw the knees away from each other and just start to kind of press the backs of your arms into the mat, into the blanket, and walk your shoulder blades down just a little bit more until that blanket comes to a place where it's about sort of your mid shoulder blade. So it's not at the base of your neck. Your neck is still lifted and off the floor and off the blanket. There's lots of space there. The back of your head is still resting on the blanket, but there's a lift in the upper back now. And see here if you can think about dropping the outer corners of your shoulders towards the earth without sort of lifting them towards your ears. This can feel really vulnerable. This can feel really open. For me, it's sort of that same sensation of when someone says cracking your heart open. This is what it feels like to me. So just allowing your breath to come in and move out with whatever rhythm meets you where you are. Just kind of very gently cracking open that heart space. And again, if you'd like to take your legs out long and let those legs just rest, you can do that. It does change the shape, change the effect of the opening into the front body, but it feels equally good. And then all you're going to do, if your legs are out long, it's going to be a nice, easy transition. You're just going to continue to kind of scooch down your blanket. If you'd like, you can always roll that blanket just a little bit more and make a nice little neck roll right underneath that space we were working with the tennis balls when we first lie down on our backs. So supporting the cervical spine, supporting between the base of the skull and the top of the shoulders, and letting your head just fall back onto the blanket to be held on that blanket. And here, if you'd like, you can take your arms out wide, maybe palms face up. If it feels good, you can let your legs go long. And notice there's a bit of a tractioning that happens when you extend your legs out long, so your skull will move away from your shoulders. It may feel good. If you need to lessen that traction, you can always move your hips more towards the top of your mat. And here, just close your eyes. Maybe take your hands to your body if you like, or keep them broad. But we're just going to move into a little yoga nidra to wrap our short practice up today. So here, just begin to close your eyes or soften your gaze. And just start to go inside. Start to just notice what your breath is doing. Notice how it's moving in and moving out. And as you begin to notice what your breath is doing, gently start to draw your awareness into your body. So starting with the palms of your hands, notice what the air feels like on the palms of your hands. If your hands are face up, can you feel the sensation of air moving across your palms? And then gently draw your awareness into both forearms. Notice what maybe the clothing or the air feels like around your forearms. See if you can soften the bones down. And then next, take your awareness into your upper arms. Let your upper arms soften and reach towards the floor. And feel your shoulders widen and broaden and sink down into the support of the mat and of the blanket behind your head. And then gently draw your attention to the space between your shoulders. So across your chest, across your collarbones. See if with the next breath you can find a little bit more broadness, a little bit more softness. And then gently move your attention down into your rib cage. Feel the rhythmic expansion and contraction with each breath. Feel the softness in your belly. And allow the skin of your back and your belly to broaden and widen and melt. Feel the sense of your belly button moving towards your spine and just softening down. And then gently send your awareness into your pelvis. Feel the weight of that bone as it rests into the mat. Feel the stableness, the broadness, the softness. And then gently bring your awareness into both thighs, your upper leg. Feel your femurs rest back in the socket of your hips. Feel those bones melt down. Reach down with gravity. Notice the fronts and the backs of your knees. Notice the front of your shins, the backs of your calves. Feel the weight of your heels against the earth. Feel the soles of your feet softening, the tops of your feet, the skin across the tops of your feet just softening and melting down. And allow any tension in your toes to just melt away. And then return your awareness, your attention back up to that place that's being supported by your blanket. That lovely, long, elegant neck. See if you can imagine a little bit of space between each vertebrae. A little bit of openness, a little bit of softness. Feel the weight of your skull as it rests down on the mat. And bring your attention to the edges of your jaw, back of your teeth. Release your tongue from your roof of your mouth. Soften your cheeks. And allow your ears to slide towards the mat. See if you can send the slightest bit of awareness to the corners of your eyes. Feel the weight of your eyelids. And let your eyes rest back in their sockets. Draw your attention to your forehead and feel the skin across your forehead broaden, soften, and expand. And finally, draw your attention to the very crown of your head, your scalp. Imagine that scalp moving down and softening into the earth. Any tension, any holding is simply melting down into your mat, into the support of the blanket. And here for a moment, just hold the awareness of your entire body in your mind's eye. See if you can feel all of the places where your body connects down to the mat. See if you can let go of any holding, any hanging on you may be doing. And just rest here. Let the stillness wrap you up. Allow softness into your body. And when you're ready, slowly begin to invite waves of movement back into your system. Maybe taking a deep breath. Maybe slowly wiggling your fingers, your toes, and starting to wake the body up. Rolling your wrists, your ankles. Maybe just shaking your head left and right. And on your next deep inhale, go ahead and reach the arms up overhead. Stretch the feet out long. Take a nice, long, good morning stretch. And then slowly, when you're ready, just roll over to your left or right. Find a place where you feel supported. And just offer up a moment of thanks, a moment of gratitude for the quiet, the relaxation, the opening. And when you're ready, slowly roll your shoulders more towards the earth and gently press down to sit up and find an easy seat. And whatever shape that easy seat has taken today is perfectly okay. Slowly and gently take your hands to heart center. Let your thumbs rest against your sternum as you feel your sternum lift back up into your thumbs. And gently bow your head towards your heart. All of the love and light in me bows to and honors all of the love and light in each one of you. Namaste.